I think it was by Pericles, who was saying that you may not want to deal with politics, but politics will find a way to deal with you. So you might as well know what it is that you will get into.
Yeah, you should probably at least be familiar with it and understand how it is affecting you.
Yes. And you have raised many points that I want to address and
of course,
to build the discussion.
Sorry if I'm throwing stuff at you.
I welcome this. I'm really happy with this. So let's take them one at a time. You were saying about the need to deal with politics. Okay. Yes. So in a sense, why would you say that there is such a need? Well, apart from obvious, let us try to put it down and become explicit about it.
Well, I think outside of just the fact of the Pericles quote that you just put, that it will find a way to deal with you eventually, by blocking yourself off from politics, you are blocking yourself off from an essential element of social life, and thereby you might be denying yourself some greater striving or greater meaning that can be brought to yourself.
So there was this force that eudaimonistic ethics had, or virtue ethics. And we see from Aristotle that the life of virtue was the life of reason and the life where we exercise our rational capacities. And we could say it is a form of self-realization. And the question is whether that self-realization involves the exercise of particular virtues, some of which are virtues that can only be exercised in a political context. And this is what Aristotle is getting at when he's saying that, for instance, man is a political animal, that to live a good life, we have to exercise virtues that have to be exercised within the context of a community. If we do not live in a community, we cannot exercise particular virtues, not because we do not have the ability to, or the disposition to, but because we are not in the circumstances that allow this. So this is a very big difference between how Cicero, on the one hand, understands the good life and how Epicureans understood the good life. And in a way, it shows today, because we have two completely different understandings of what freedom consists. We have more than two, but in this case, we have two different conceptions of freedom that operate.
Do you mind, just before you carry on, and I don't mean to throw out another aspect of this if it ends up being, but I can see you taking notes just in case. There could also, as well as the virtue aspect of it, be a more moral aspect and perspective that you could take as well. And I don't mean to sound judgmental if this does. I'm just stating what I see as a fact, which is that it could be taken that if you do not want to interact with the political sphere, and you can see that there are things around you that you know to be immoral, that you know go against your own personal code of ethics, and you do nothing to change that could be seen as a point of moral cowardice.
Yeah, I think so. The thing is with it's very important because here we have two different conceptions of liberty. We have the negative one, or the purely negative, which is the Epicurean one, and we have a more positive view of freedom. What do I mean? If you haven't watched it, in Symposium 2 with Bo, we are talking about positive, negative, and Republican conceptions of liberty and the way that they were the way that they were developed in antiquity and that they stay relevant nowadays. So it may be worth giving it a watch. So negative liberty consists in freedom from interference by others in a rough way. So we have this sentiment of people who say, I want to be left alone. On the other hand, we have a more positive conception of freedom that says that it's not enough to say that what we should be free from. To truly be free, we need to exercise particular capacities. In this case, we need to exercise our virtues. We need to exercise our virtues in the context of a community, and therefore we need to participate, for instance, in the decision-making processes that govern our country and our community. So the thing is, we have many people who have this idea that let's elect someone use that person as a sacrificial lamb somehow, and we are not going to support that person when that person is going to put forward the political changes we want to see. So what is going to happen when a particular mob goes against the politician we want to vote for, and who we want to? Are we going to support them? Are we going to protect them?
I mean, I would say personally that if you had a hand in putting that person in that position in the first place, then you do have a responsibility to continue to support them afterwards.
Yeah, yes, but there is a tendency, unfortunately, that Cicero finds in Epicureans to outsource political participation. And instead of saying, let's say, support particular politicians or become politicians ourselves or participate to a degree in the whole process of governance, let us just outsource to another person or another group of persons the whole process of governing. And this has a number of problems that Cicero points out, and he anticipates. He's not strawmanning Epicureans. He does say that, of course, if there was a crisis, Epicureans would say we cannot stay in that, let's say, state of mind that where we lack ataraxia, in that turbulent state of mind. We need to actually engage in politics to make things better, so we can withdraw back again to our gardens, to our quiet gardens. The problem with this, what Cicero says, and he has some beautiful lines there in the very beginning of his Republic, or at least the text we have of his Republic, that he says that it is sort of hubristic to think that politics does not require skill. It is something that we were talking with Carl about Mike Loakshott. Mike Loakshott was saying that politics is not just a theoretical discipline, it involves a skill that we practice. And Cicero agrees with this.
Yes, he would you mind if I quote some of it? Because I've got this quote here from the preface that he gives, and he says, I find this, and it's directly related to what you're saying, I find this most astonishing in the writings of intellectuals. They plead their inability to steer the ship when the sea is calm, because they have never been taught and have never cared to acquire such knowledge, and yet they proclaim that they will take the helm when the waves are at their highest.
Yes.
That's brilliant. I mean, that's just excellent. When you start to analogize it with other practices that you could do, like steering the ship, well, it becomes entirely clear, well, why would I expect somebody who's never learned how to do this skill to be able to steer us when we're at our worst period?
I think we're guilty of this, especially if we watch soccer, where occasionally, in some cases, where we think that we are much better than the coach. And we say, no.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Put the other guy in. Yeah. Yes, and he has this beautiful way of expressing the idea that it is somehow hubristic to think that we can be experts at something that requires skills that we do not cultivate. It's exactly what he said. It's people who may think that, I'm the best in everything. I'm not going to stir the ship when the sea is calm, but I really like action. Well, it's only when we have a perfect storm that I'm gonna.
Well, it's a position of approach.
Navigate the ship.
It's a position of approaching everything from pure critique, which I don't think is entirely invalid, because I think we've got more than enough right to be able to criticize things even if we're unable to do them ourselves. But if you approach the entirety of life from that position, then you are kind of approaching it from a coward's point of view, as far as I'm concerned. But that isn't to discount critique in itself, because there are plenty of people out there who, for instance, don't know how to play an instrument, who can listen to someone playing an instrument badly and recognize it, for instance. It's just that when they say, I could do better, or give me the opportunity to do better in that position, then they're being facetious.
And what they forget is that sometimes things seem easy because we see good practitioners practicing them. It's the sentiment that sometimes we may hear a song and say, this is easy to sing. sing along.
Oh.
And when we try to do it, we find that it's anything but easy.
Oh, I've had a few karaoke nights that have been very demonstrative of that. Trust me, when I got up one time after a few drinks and thought, you know what, I can sing Jamiroquai.
I hope it wasn't like a dog being stabbed.
Well, I'd got up and sung one song beforehand, Lionel Richie. I'm actually quite decent at singing Easy by Lionel Richie. But then afterwards I decided Cosmic Girl by Jamiroquai was the next song for me. And that was the last song on that night because I don't think anybody would have let me get back up again after that one.
So Cicero is arguing against this sentiment. He says that the Epicurean temperament, the temperament that people have and they want to withdraw in their own private spheres instead of participating also in the community and the way that the community is run, threatens the republic with disintegration. We need people who are more active, because when they are more active, we have better citizens. When we have better citizens, we can evaluate the policies of, let's say, our countries better, and we can prevent disasters.
Yes, I think it's also important to note that Cicero, like many from ancient history, was viewing the idea of citizenship from a very particular standpoint that we don't share these days, where citizenship and the suffrage has been afforded to anyone and everyone, and we're getting to the point where I think in Wales I've heard talk of literal asylum seekers being offered the opportunity to vote in the local constituency where they're residing, which is just an awful and terrible idea. And this is the idea that citizenship is part of the natural hierarchy that comes from with existing within a society, and there once again are the responsibilities and duties that come with that, and the responsibility of citizenship is such that it should be required that people are at the very least knowledgeable and able to cultivate those virtues before they can be entrusted with that responsibility.
And I would add that this is incredibly permissive, an incredibly permissive policy, and it's problematic. And we don't see this, for instance, in ancient Athenian democracy, where in order to be a citizen, you had to, for instance, have at least one parent to be a citizen. Then Pericles, I think, changed this at some point, and he said that we need both parents to be.
It was very restrictive, but at the
Yes.
same time, I do think that enacting boundaries on such categories is what gives them their meaning in the first place.
And it was restrictive because there is the idea that if you want to participate in the decision-making process of a country, you need to somehow stay in that country for some time and identify yourself to an extent with it.
Yeah, and I think the practical results of what we exist in nowadays just shows that the vast majority of people out there, and perhaps I could be included in this as well, perhaps any of us could, it's very difficult to know the threshold for it, but the vast majority of people are not fit whatsoever to exercise these citizenship responsibilities. As far as I'm concerned, modern conceptions of democracy are not something I'm a fan of.
And there is the further problem that we face nowadays with population. In what sense? In the sense that in Western societies, we have declining birth rates. And this causes all sorts of problems when we have people who, let's say, don't respect society. To put it diplomatically.
When the only thing that's raising population in certain Western countries is the influx of immigrants who have no ties to the land, no ties to the cultural heritage, no family that have ever come from here, why would you expect somebody like that to exercise their citizenship responsibly and in the interests of the majority population?
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.